is there anything that had happened in your life that made you frustrated when you were using unethical money?
Yeah, being broke.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it was 2018. I had my first real job. I worked for Apple as a phone support person, which is a nightmare. That's
Wow.
another story in itself. So that was pretty stressful, but I was getting paid for
2018
that.
is when you finished your degree?
No, I was working at Apple and I was doing university as well, two
Okay.
degrees. It wasn't 8 subjects at a time. I'll put everybody at ease there. But that's when I first started getting some money. I was spending it like crazy at the time. 2019, I started seriously investing money. I got a different job that paid me slightly more. And I was putting all of my money into stocks and trying to pick some winners. I think I had Microsoft at $100 US. I had CRISPR, which I watched,
Yeah.
10x and then drop back down. I had a bunch of other ones that did really well. And at the same time, the 2019 bull run?
There would have been a bull run 2017 that crashed early 2018, and then 2020 there was another bull run.
So I'm thinking of 2020. And I started putting money into Bitcoin instead. So I kind of had the two going on. The stocks weren't performing very well. Everyone was so bullish about Bitcoin. It's going to go to 500K this cycle. Like, holy shit, everybody get on board. And just
Yeah,
slowly
this is the
started
super
investing in
cycle,
those.
guys. I remember that.
Yeah.
Dan Held writing about the super cycle in what would have been early 2021, something like that.
I
Yeah.
remember looking at that double top formation, when it peaked, crashed, and then got back up there and then crashed again and it went into the bear market.
Mhm.
It had just done that second top, and I was like to my family, I'm like, guys, that was the double top. We just hit the top of this cycle, and they're like, no, it's still going to 250,000,
Well,
and it didn't. Anyway, recently in 2023, I sold out of all my stocks, and I put it all into Bitcoin.
wow.
So I had made some really good investments. I tripled my money in like 3 years.
Well done.
Um,
That's
yeah,
brilliant.
thank you. Some losses, of course, some
Mm.
losers in there. IBM let me down. What are they doing over there?
Well, but you have to make mistakes. It doesn't. There is no investor out there that's never lost money, and
Well, shit,
anyone that
because I
tells you that they are is lying.
I have lost money, but I don't think it was my fault. So maybe I'm yet to experience this
Really,
phenomenon. Yeah,
really,
my
mate.
friend recommended
Well,
me
I
some
stand corrected then, mate. Well played.
the ones. Well, actually, IBM was kind of a loss, but technically it was like $50 in profit, so it wasn't
Okay,
actually.
maybe we'll let you get away with that one. We'll give it
I'm
to you.
just worried it's coming up.
I'm aware of time, Pat. We normally shoot for an hour. Do you have a little extra time today?
I've got as much time as we need, man.
Okay, great. This is cool because it often happens this way. We've kind of done the conversation in reverse slightly today, but whatever. The decision to sell your equities and to buy Bitcoin, just run me through why you decided to do that.
I think it was a combination of feeling like I didn't have enough Bitcoin and these rumors going around that the stock market's going to make a downturn, it's going to crash. Warren Buffett's pulling out all of his stocks, he's holding cash. Who else was it? Some of those really big old guys were saying, like, no, I'm worried, like the stock market's going to collapse. The price to earnings ratios, all this sort of talk made me realize, no, these are too slow, and I need to just be in Bitcoin, which is the real choice to make.
And it's interesting as well because obviously when you're working behind the scenes as a producer for someone like myself who's doing deep dives into Bitcoin, you're getting paid by the hour as a consultant to help me out. But what is not necessarily in the job advert is like all of the investing knowledge that would have been picked up through that process, if that makes sense, which is a very nice kind of kicker on how you spend your time in a way. And in some senses, it's like that is such a brilliant use of time. It's like monetizing your skills at the same time as learning about something else that helps you put the money that you're earning into better places.
I see your angle on that, but I don't know if I would agree that that's my perspective.
Okay, please.
My favorite episode of Bitcoin with Jake was one of the earlier ones, Lord Fusitua.
Yep. The
Can
guy
you
from
recall?
Tonga. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
can you recall
absolutely.
much about that? He was
Yes.
talking about they're going to have like 4 or 5 or 6 ASICs per household, because Tonga has a very, very small population, but they've got a fuckload of money somehow. I can't quite remember. They're doing something
No,
right,
I
and
remember.
they were gonna be mining. They were gonna be geothermal
Mm.
powering from these
Maybe we'll have
volcanoes.
to get him on. We'll have to find out how
I
he got
think you
on.
should get him on again, because
Yeah,
it blew my mind. It was like the
I
audio
think he
quality
was
was
quite
so
sick.
bad, but
Yeah, from memory, sorry, why was that your favorite?
stories like that, just things going on in the world more than like investing knowledge,
Okay,
is what
that
interests
that
me, I would
that's what
say.
you've got as a benefit out of
Yeah, I
listening
would
to these
say so.
conversations. Okay,
Yeah,
and in some ways, I agree in that the information we use to make decisions can come from places that we didn't expect. So, like, I want to learn about investing. You pick up an investing book, but actually, do you buy more Bitcoin? Yes or no? Listening to a guy talking about how this ethical money can help his country become less dependent on international monetary organizations like the IMF and less dependent on places like China by selling natural resources that they already have using decentralized Bitcoin mining. And he was also very interesting about the fact that the GDP of Tonga was really very small, like a few hundred million a year. Maybe let's call it, for example, 250 million a year. But most of that is remittance. And he spoke about an example where if you had a guy in Sydney sending money back to his relative in Tonga and they're sending using Western Union, the like 20%, 30% of the value of that $100 that gets sent disappears. By the time you also pay for a cab into town in Tonga, another $5, they're getting 50 out of 100 in the back pocket of the local. And that means that if you didn't have all those costs and friction as a country like Tonga and use Bitcoin and Lightning, then you could send 100 back, keep the 100, and the GDP of the country doubles. That was also really wild. Like
yeah,
monetizing
yeah,
stranded energy on an island with geothermal, epic. But also then the whole business model of the country changes because the payment infrastructure is improved. And so as niche as that conversation is, it's like, God, this thing Bitcoin really makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. And then you can make decisions because of that. Yeah, cool. That makes loads of sense to me. Oh, nice one, Pat. Thank you. And okay, so you just mentioned like being broke. So I know that this is not probably a very easy question to answer, but could you take me back to the moment you're referring to, like how it felt, and why does Bitcoin change that?
okay. It's particularly annoying when you're at college. I was studying sort of on campus, so I was living with a bunch of people in student accommodation, and there was drinking every weekend. We all wanted to go out and do things, and I'd be like, "Oh, I ran out of money for the week, guys. Like, I'm not going to be there," and stuff like that. So it is a bit of a FOMO situation. It is a bit of a, how am I going to get myself into the next 5 years if I'm not making any money situation. But, there's jobs out there for people who are hungry for work, and it's just a matter of making the right decisions when you get that money. The biggest things I've ever purchased were a laptop and a computer. I really don't buy much else, don't buy fancy clothes or anything. So in that way, it was easy for me. I think if I was a shopaholic, I'd be a bit more under the pressure. But yeah, I can't think of any specific like moment I cracked or anything. It was just broke all the way through until 2018, and then things started to look a bit brighter.
Mm-hmm. And was that because you figured out that Bitcoin was how you wanted to save your money?
Not straight away. Not straight away. So I learned about it quite quickly thanks to my background, and I could see that it was, primed to succeed. Everybody has to build their confidence. I started out not really knowing how much of my total wealth should be in there, but then you start to learn, a couple of podcasts later, and it became a much more serious thing. And I was the type to, invest pretty much everything I could afford to.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise known as the DCA army that I've heard
Yeah,
described
yeah,
before. It's like, okay, so Bitcoin, whatever price it's sitting at today, if it drops by 50%, there's still a whole lot of people out there that, regardless of what the price is, every Monday when their paycheck comes through and they've got some disposable income, they are buying. and it's like a wall of demand that you see it. Gary's economics, who we've been hammering a little bit lately, who talks about, crypto going to zero. You're like, all right, mate, have you ever met someone that DCA's into Bitcoin regardless of price? Like, come on, mate. Anyway, I've still open debate, Gary. If you want to talk about what is money, then, myself are here to have that conversation, and Pat will be chopping it up with glee in the background.